Version control with Git. The main objectives of this tutorial are to create a GitHub repository named QBB 2020 Answers, clone your repository onto MOOR, and discuss version control with Git. Lesson. Create QBB 2020 Answers. During this bootcamp, you will submit your work using GitHub. In order to do this, let us create a repository named QBB 2020 Answers. Navigate to github.com, and if you are not already signed in, do so by clicking on the Sign In button in the upper right corner. Once signed in, click on the plus icon in the upper right corner and then click on New Repository. Give your repository the name QBB 2020 Answers. Importantly, be sure to check the box next to initialize this repository with a README. After doing this, click on Create Repository. Voila! Assuming you checked the box to initialize this repository with a README file, you should see a screen showing your QBB 2020 Answers repository containing a single file named readme.md. Let's now take a quick tour of this repository using the GitHub web interface. First, click on the pencil icon highlighted to edit the contents of this file using your web browser. You can now edit the contents of the README file using a web-based text editor. Like Slack, this editor accepts Markdown formatted text. Experiment by adding a list of 3 to 5 items such as foods, countries, or movies. In this case, we have listed 5 of your preparatory work exercises. Check that your list is properly formatted by clicking on Preview Changes. GitHub highlights any changes with red or green. Once you are satisfied, enter a commit message describing your changes. In this case, we are using a short message simply stating that we added a list of prep work. Click the green Commit Changes button at the bottom. If you were successful, you will now see a read-only view of your README file. Note that your changes are tracked by a hash code represented here by a 7-character ID. Click on the hash code to see more details about your changes. This is a view of the permanent record for this particular set of changes. In such a manner, you can refer back to any set of changes that you make in this project. Click on QBB 2020 Answers at the top to go back to the main repository page. On this main page, you can see all the changes have been tracked for this project. In this case, there are 2 representing the creation of the project and the change that we just made. Click on the commits to see the log history. This view shows the short description associated with each set of tracked changes. Clone QBB 2020 Answers on MOOR. We will now practice making a copy of your Git repository on MOOR. First, connect to MOOR using SSH. As a reminder, after entering your 2-factor authentication code and password, you will see a prompt with your username and MOOR login node. List the file contents to confirm that you see the 5 directories: code, data, desktop, scratch, and work. Make a copy of your Git repository by typing in the command git space clone space https://github.com/name/qbb2020-answers. Note that you should not type in name, but rather your GitHub username. Assuming you typed in the correct command, Git will report the data it has transferred to clone this repository from GitHub onto MOOR. Double-check that this was successful by listing the files and confirming that a 6th directory now appears, QBB 2020 Answers. One final check. First, change directories into QBB 2020 Answers and confirm by listing files to see the single readme.md file. Display the contents of the file by typing in the command cat readme.md. You should see the list of items that you entered using the website. Discuss version control with Git. The Software Carpentry, Version Control with Git lesson will walk you through tracking changes using Git from the command line. Notably, you will get some practice with git add, git status, git commit, git status, and git pull. One special note for Part 2, setting up Git. Unless you know what you are doing, please be sure to configure your Git environment to use the Nano text editor. Specifically, enter the command highlighted here, git config --global core.edit --nano-w. As a reminder, you use the Nano text editor during the software carpentry, the Unix shell, lesson. Please refer to Part 3 of that lesson for a refresher if necessary. This editor provides a constant cheat sheet at the bottom of the screen on how to save, aka write out, and exit. Note that the caret symbol indicates that you hold down the Control key while pressing the appropriate letter. In this tutorial, we created a GitHub repository named QPB 2020 Answers, cloned your repository onto C-MOOR, and discussed version control with Git lesson. Some possible next steps are to complete version control with Git lesson and review good enough practices in scientific computing. Thank you to all the people that helped.